So, you're a finance student and that huge graduation project is looming. You're probably staring at a blank page wondering, where do I even start? Trust me, you are not alone. But what if I told you there's a clear, straightforward framework that can turn all that confusion into a powerful, well-structured research project? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down right now. Let's get into it.
Here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this in 4 key parts. First, we'll talk about why this whole research thing is so critical in finance. Then, we'll get into the real art of crafting a perfect, sharp research question. After that, we'll explore the different types of research. Think of it as your toolkit. And finally, we'll lay out the entire process, a step-by-step map from start to finish.
Okay, first things first. Why should you care about this? Simple. In today's world of finance, we are absolutely drowning in data. The skill that really sets you apart isn't just finding information, it's knowing how to transform that sea of raw data into smart, actionable intelligence that leads to winning decisions. And this image, it really captures the heart of modern finance. Whether you're sizing up a potential acquisition, trying to forecast a company's earnings, or managing portfolio risk, a solid, systematic research method is literally the only thing that separates a brilliant decision from an incredibly expensive mistake. It's all about building your case on a foundation of real, solid evidence. So let's get a formal definition on the table. Business research isn't just, Googling stuff. It's a systematic inquiry. That means it's a deliberate, organized process. You plan your attack, you acquire the right data, you analyze it with rigor, and then, and this is key, you present those insights in a way that actually guides decisions and gets people to take action. And the strategic value here is just huge. Good research lets you make evidence-based decisions, which means you're replacing gut feelings with actual data-driven insights. It's also fundamental for risk mitigation. It helps you spot the icebergs before they hit the ship. It can give you a massive competitive advantage, helping you uncover those market opportunities that everyone else missed. And maybe most importantly for your project, it builds stakeholder confidence. You'll earn so much credibility with your professors and later on with clients and investors when your recommendations are backed by solid research. That brings us to what I think is the most critical stage of your entire project, defining your research question. The best way to think about this is like a funnel. You start with a really big, broad problem, and you systematically narrow it down and down until you have something sharp, focused, and actually answerable. So every single research project kicks off with a dilemma. It's just a high-level problem or an observation that needs attention. For example, a fund manager looks at the numbers and sees their tech portfolio is lagging way behind the market. That's it. That's the starting point. A big, kind of vague problem that needs to be figured out. From there, you translate that dilemma into a management question. And this step is all about action. It's asking, okay, what should we do about this problem? For our tech fund, the question might be, what specific strategies could we use to improve the fund's returns? You see, we're already moving toward finding a solution. And here we go. This is the final, most crucial step. You refine that action-oriented question into a precise, measurable research question. Just notice the shift here. We're no longer asking what to do. We're now asking a very specific, objective question that we can investigate with data. This question right here becomes the North Star for your entire project. Now, to build a powerful question like that, you have to understand its 2 basic building blocks. Variables. First, you have the independent variable, or IV. That's the thing you think is the cause. It's the factor you're looking at. Then you have the dependent variable, or DV. That's the effect. It's the outcome you measure to see if it was actually influenced by that independent variable. Let's map this directly onto our finance question. In how does financial leverage affect profitability? Our independent variable, the cause, is financial leverage. And we can measure that using a common metric like the debt-to-equity ratio. The dependent variable, the effect, is profitability, and we can measure that with something like return on equity, or ROE. So now our entire study is focused on one thing. Does a change in the debt-to-equity ratio cause a change in ROE? See how focused and clear that is? Okay, so once you've forged that sharp research question, you have to decide how you're going to answer it. And that brings us to the different types of research. Just think of these as 4 essential tools in your toolkit, and each one is designed for a very specific kind of job. Broadly speaking, there are 4 types. Reporting is the most basic. It's just about summarizing what's already out there. Then you have descriptive research, which goes a little deeper to describe patterns or trends.
Explanatory research is the real detective work, trying to figure out the why behind what you're seeing. And finally, predictive research tries to use the past to forecast the future.
So let's start with reporting. A reporting study simply presents the facts, period. It gives you an objective summary of data with absolutely no interpretation. The classic example is a bank's compliance report that just lists all transactions over $10,000. It's not sexy, but it's the factual foundation that all other analysis is built on.
Next up is descriptive research. This is where you're kind of like a financial journalist. You're just documenting the scene. It answers questions like, what are the characteristics of this group? Or how much of this is going on? A great finance example would be a study that looks at all the companies with successful stock buybacks and then describes their common features, like their average cash flow or their typical debt levels. It tells you what is, but it doesn't really explain why. Now for the fun part. Explanatory research is where you put on your detective hat. Here, you're moving beyond just describing what's happening to trying to understand the cause and effect relationship between your variables. You are testing a hypothesis to answer that big why question. For instance, does having more diversity on a company's board of directors actually cause an improvement in financial performance? See, this is a much deeper level of investigation. And finally, we have predictive research, which is all about trying to forecast what might happen next. This type is used all the time in finance, everywhere from hedge funds to insurance companies. It's all about building models based on historical data to predict future outcomes. A perfect example is a credit card company using your past spending habits to predict how likely you are to default on a payment in the future. So you've got your question and you've picked your research type. What's next? Well, this final section gives you the blueprint for actually doing the work, taking you step by step from the drawing board all the way to your final report. The research process is not a random walk in the dark, okay? It is a systematic journey. It follows a logical path from your first question through designing the study, collecting the data, analyzing it, and finally presenting what you found. And while you might have to circle back to an earlier step sometimes, this structure is what keeps your project focused and on track.
So here are the key stages you're going to follow. Stage 1, problem discovery and definition. That's our funnel. 2, the literature review, where you find out what other people have already said about your topic. 3, research design and sampling, where you figure out exactly how you'll get your data. 4, the actual data collection and prep work. 5, data analysis and interpretation. This is where you make sense of it all. And finally, stage 6, reporting your results. Now, before you collect a single piece of data, you need to create a research proposal. Think of this as the master plan for your entire project. The purpose section explains why your study is important. The methods section details your exact game plan, the how. The timeline sets deadlines for each stage. The budget clarifies what you need, even if it's just your own time, and deliverables defines exactly what that final paper is going to look like. It's your guide and your promise all in one.
And that right there is the complete framework. We've gone through the why, the what, and the how of doing powerful business research for your finance project. So now there's really only one question left to ask you. What financial mystery will your research solve?